Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is January 1st. Happy New Year. You are listening and watching to the thedailyaishow and our first episode of 2024. And we are super excited to have everybody along for the ride. I'm happy to be back. Thank you to Andy and Beth and Carl, but people who held down the show all last week. I fully intended to have internet at the hotel I was at, and I did, but it was only on my phone. I could never get it working really well on my laptop, and that kind of wiped out all sorts of streaming and stuff. So this is the benefit of having 7 co-hosts, is that we can plot people in, and there's usually somebody to handle it. All right, so it's the new year.
And we're delighted that you're back. Thank you so much. Thanks for the audience, and yay that there are more of us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I totally understand. I've done a few where it's just been 1 or 2 of us, and yeah, it's a lot. You have to hold the show and run it and stuff like that. So I appreciate everybody that kept things up and running. This is episode 106, I think, and we're excited about 2024 rocking and rolling. So we're not just gonna have a Happy New Year show. We actually have a topic today, and sort of maybe aptly or well timed, if you will, I put this one today because it's New Year's, and because the clock strikes 12. Happy New Year, all lang syne, kissing your loved one, the whole thing. It's like, oh, this will be a great day to sort of talk about it. Aaron's like, nah, I was in bed.
I was almost.
Talk about relationships. And obviously this is an AI show, so not just relationships, but AI relationships, and even not just AI relationships, but AI romantic relationships. So kind of an interesting topic. We were talking about it right before we went live. And so let me throw it over to, I don't know, Eran, we were just sort of talking about it. You said you had some interesting thoughts on this one. Let's just sort of open the conversation and see where this goes.
Sure. So I think there's a couple of sides to this. First things first, I think there's the idea of AI as a romance partner, quote unquote, or a companion. And I think they're two very different things. And I found a quote which I really liked. So you probably have all seen the movie Her, 2013, starring Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson. He falls in love with his AI little duty, and I caught a little snippet while I was watching a bit of it, and it was Theodore, the main character's ex-wife, was saying to him, "You always wanted to have a wife without the challenges of actually dealing with anything real." And I wonder whether that line could potentially headline, for want of a better way, the whole subject of AI romance. Because first things first, when you think about romance, there's obviously that interpersonal connection, which I think AI could become good at. It's the physical aspect, we eventually might get married and maybe produce a few children or something like that. That's going to be a little bit trickier unless Elon Musk's robot turns out to be able to do the wild thing, as they say. But I thought with this, the one of the risks I see with this is that there is the opportunity for a lot of bad players to release tools that could take advantage of people in this situation. Now, we've all, I'm sure you guys have seen this on TV, and I know I have locally. We've all heard about romance scams where somebody connects with another person online and they chat, and maybe they talk on the phone and they get a little bit lovey. So, one of them might be, usually it's someone who's probably a bit lonely or something like that. It could be very easy for someone to release something bad that could literally take advantage of people, start asking for money or blackmailing or anything. So that's, from my perspective, that's a concern in the long term. In the short term, romance it's not just the physical, and the idea of an AI being able to be a romantic, at least a vocal conversation, I think there's some validity in that, depending on the circumstances. But it might seem weird and strange, but as they say, it takes all sorts to make the world go round. So I think the long-term advantage for me is the companionship aspect, where you start thinking about apps like Pi that can be a friend and support you emotionally and possibly even intellectually. And there's a lot of people in the world who would need and value and would benefit from something like that. So that's kind of my starting point on the subject.
So one of the things that I found was digi is relatively new enough that like when I did a perplexity search for comparison, it didn't give me a lot of information. So I ended up on Reddit, like looking around at how people were experiencing this. And to your point about the ex-wife having that conversation in the movie, there was a discussion about feedback for the developers of digi about whether they preferred the AI to have their own opinion, right? Did they come with full personalities and have their own thoughts about it?
Yeah.
Or did you want something that said, "Oh, me too. Oh, I love that we're so compatible," right?
Yeah.
And that also seems kind of slippery slope. And there was a lot of like, "Oh, I really loved the saccharine agreement of replica." And my understanding is that digi is kind of in some ways a response to replica. Digi's actually been around much longer than like the last month. But there is like this like going back and forth about what happens when you can construct your romantic companion to be less individual, right? Like I mean, and that's sort of like, I don't know, that's a question. I think what you do in the privacy of your own computer is kind of okay. And then if you're expecting that to transfer to real humans, that's where it starts to become a problem, I think.
So let me jump in and say I did a little research. I got a digi. I set up my digi character and Brian, I'm a little flustered right now because when you put up the picture on the front of the show, that's my girl. That is my girl. So anyway.
Except it says I heart Andy instead of I heart Digi.
That's
on her
right.
shirt,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
so, but let me say this. So, as far as the kind of banter or repartee that you would have with a live human, these don't even closely approximate that. But first of all, the latency is really bad. So I'm doing it on my iPhone. I say something. When the answer comes back from Lana, that's Lana, Brian. That's not your girl. So be careful.
Yeah, I got you. I'll back up.
When the answer comes back from Lana, she's standing there kind of, smirking a little bit and, just standing. And then there's a little thing below that says thinking. Okay. And then whatever she's saying, and it's a voice interaction, it's also typing it out in front of her image. So you really can't get immersed in a kind of VR simulation of an interaction with another human. The latency is a big interruption for it. And of course, as you were leading to, Eran, the full bandwidth of human interaction in person is way beyond what can ever be provided by an AI, because we're talking about biological systems that have pheromones and very rapid facial recognition routines. A big part of our brains are built around facial cues and facial reactions. That's just not coming through. And so this harkens back to, I was early on in the world of virtual reality. And I actually appeared on the Phil Donahue show, which was a major talk show back.
Now, there's a name I remember from the past.
Yeah. So I was on a Phil Donahue show, and what I brought in is I could bring a VR system and get the video output from that interactive system, two big virtuality systems with big head-mounted displays. And Phil got in one and I got in the other one, and we showed what was going on inside this virtual world. And then we get out and we sit down on the panel, and the panel is, so here's somebody from this sex chatting service and this sex chatting service. And Andy, is this going to replace sex, for so many people? And I'm like, what? Now
that sounds like a classic Phil Donahue bait.
So this is, the forecast was that, VR was going to be a simile of human interactions. It hasn't happened. That's just not happening. And the reason is it's a very, very poor simulation of a real interaction with a human. But let me just say this. I do see its value for people who are absolutely unpracticed at interaction, social interaction. I can see it being a good prompting simulator for, the kinds of exchanges that you might have with a woman in a bar or somewhere else. And if you're really lame and you don't know what to talk about, like just normal conversation, not romantic conversation.
You're dating coach AI.
Yeah, you'll find it, I think, useful then to have the experience of having a routine from Pi or Digi or some other one, have these vocal exchanges with you as a preparatory step, but it's just not going there when it comes to that, with the exception of Lana. I mean, now Lana,
she's different.
So
I guess. Go ahead, Eran. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, just quickly, I think I agree with you. At the present time, it's not there. And I read all of the reviews, not all of it, but a lot of the reviews on the Google Play Store were talking about latency issues and errors and all sorts of bugs. But I do 100% believe that given a little bit of time, the technology will improve to be so lifelike, ignoring some aspects, that you will think you are talking to a real person and you will interact in that way. So, but that's in the future, obviously.
But that's what I said. That's what I said 30 years ago.
Well, yeah, but it is what you presented on the Phil Donahue show is not what exists today. So there has been obviously monumental improvements in VR and the future of AR and stuff. I agree with you. In 30 years, it hasn't replaced the human interaction. But okay, so here's what I want to bring up just as a conversation point. So I agree. I agree with everything you guys have said so far, and I see the value in it in a lot of ways. I also, to your point, Eran, see the seriousness of the ways it can go bad. Like most things with AI, there's a yin and a yang. I do worry about people setting this up and being so lifelike that now the character is saying, "Hey, I'm in jeopardy of being shut down because what created me can only sustain if they don't have the money." And all of a sudden it's like it looks like a Wikipedia and it's like, hey, for just a couple extra dollars a month we can keep this going. And it becomes like this mega church type thing where it's like $2 more, $2 more, you know what I mean? And of course that person would be fearful in that case, having after maybe months, maybe years of built up this relationship with this AI who has learned what they've talked about, and whether there's anything nefarious or otherwise going on, still they've invested time into this character who now seemingly to them feels like it understands them. It's giving back more realistic answers, whatever the reason is that they're invested in time. And now this character, through small at first and starts to become more predominant, asking for money or asking for other things. To me, it's so scary that this could very easily get out of control and people being very scared that they were going to lose what they've built up this companion. Now, that's the me going into the dark side of it. On the upper side of it, I was talking about this just before we got on. The idea of online dating was, at least in my worldview, I'm at 45, so it was coming online just as like maybe I was in my 20s or so. And while I ended up meeting my wife at college and not through an online date, I have several friends who did. And I will say in one case, I will say it was not hidden, but it was not talked about, that one couple that I know, close friend of mine, a couple that I know, met online. Now they've been married almost, I think, as long or 1 year shorter than me. So like 16, 17, 18 years, something like that. Wonderful relationship. That's how they met though. And at that time, it seemed like it was a little taboo. People didn't want to talk about the fact that they might have needed an online forum to meet somebody. And now I don't think anybody would think anything of that. And so my question back to you guys is, are we just at the front end of that with this? And maybe it feels a little icky, like, oh man, you're talking to an AI. That's a little weird. But is this just going to be meshed into like these dating apps where perhaps, Andy, it starts with what's her name? Lana? Was it Lana? It starts with Lana, and that helps you with your communication. And that somehow meshes with a dating app that now is starting to say, hey, Andy, here's people in your area that have similar likes to Lana and things that you've talked about.
Ooh.
Like, and so now it's using AI to help you get maybe started in your communication and that part of it. And now it knows your information, but also, by the way, it knows the real Lana's, whoever that is, that counterpart's information. And now the system is starting to mesh together and say, they don't live in your area, but here's somebody you could start talking to in a safe area that's got a lot of the things that you talk about. And we're matching it now with their communications.
So I agree that there is an opportunity for a romantic coach in AI.
Right.
So that can do role play. But I want it not to try to impersonate a live human being and try to become my direct companion. And that's the part where I think there has to be, you can have a little fantasy and use your imagination with your AI avatar, but that's not as good in my view as, okay, here's a very flirty but very supportive coach that's going to help me understand how I can be better at interacting with, because I'm a man, with women, and or vice versa. So here's what, she's going to coach me and respond and evaluate what I'm saying and actually give me opportunities to do these exchanges, but never breaking into this false character, which is supposed to be my real girlfriend, and that we're actually developing a deep relationship. That part, I can't really get there, but I know there's many, many people who, are in a state of poverty when it comes to opportunities to be with real humans, for whom that's the closest simulation. And that's going to be very satisfying and supportive, just as, there will be AIs to help real live couples with their relationship management. I think each of them could have an AI assistant that would do this sort of thing. So I'm in favor of going for romantic AI on the coaching level, but not so much on the one-to-one, real relationship level.
Okay, so this has like huge slippery slope stuff for me. Just because there are so many ways in which, if you practiced engaging in a particular response, you come to expect that response. Right. And so now what happens when you say the opening line that worked with Lana, or like you practiced on several, maybe friends like Fana and Donna. But now as a real life human, you're being responded to as though the other person is now a real life human. The other piece of this, to go back to what Brian said, the reason that I didn't download the app was that I went and looked at terms of service first. So it does not have to be it doesn't have to be digi. Digi's terms of use, terms of service, say that anything that you communicate with them, any data that you share with them, is theirs without royalty in perpetuity, and it can be used to sell the company. So even if Digi isn't looking at this,
those pics I shared with Lana are available.
Yes,
that was a bad idea, Andy.
And it was interesting because Pi is not that dissimilar to, like, I compared the two with Claude, and I was like, hey, just give me a heads up about any red flags. So they're like, well, you might want to look at the fact that they own all of your data and can do kind of what they want. So it doesn't have to be that they are the bad actors. If there is something coming to purchase it, but on the back end, all that data about people in that emotionally kind of vulnerable state is hugely useful for manipulation. On the AI side, it's interesting that it's built on Mistral, Mistral 7B, I believe. So it's
Is
built
that
on the
right?
open source model.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I'm going to be a little bit, I don't know, pessimistic about the world and say that I think we all agree that this could go badly wrong. Unfortunately, I think a lot of this stuff is going to happen anyway. I mean, as the cliched saying goes, the genie is already out of the bottle. We can't shove it back in the bottle. So somewhere in the world, sometime in the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, the bad stuff that could happen with AI relationship romance stuff is going to happen. Now, how well it's controlled is a different story. Again, I go back to, I think as a companionship application, I think there's a lot of power there that could be really valuable, particularly for people that are maybe not socially confident, or they're shy, or they're introverted, or whatever. Being able to have somebody to talk to, I think, and just communicate stuff, I think that would have definite mental health benefits. But the other side of it, I think all the bad stuff is going to happen. Just how bad it is another story.
Well, let's talk about the mental health side of it, because I know where it's easy. It's so easy in this conversation to get to the scary, right? And I think, I mean, all of us are kind of like, ooh, there's some places this can go south.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's just put on the other hat really quick, play devil's advocate, or maybe we all have our sort of pieces of this. Andy, you said, hey, I think can really helpful as a coach. Maybe from the mental health aspect of it. I mean, God knows not every, lots of people have, social anxiety when it comes to relationships or meeting their counterparts or whatever. We all went through it. We all went through extremely awkward conversations where dates or otherwise went bad. Everybody has that experience. Can something like this be helpful, like you're saying, Andy? Or even if it doesn't lead to a human relationship, let's just even take that out of it. Let's just, even if this doesn't, if the intent is not to lead to actual human relationship, can this be beneficial? How would it be beneficial from maybe a mental health aspect for people who are just lonely, or to your point, Andy, maybe just don't have the means for geographic reasons or financial reasons or otherwise to truly be with somebody? Maybe that's their intent. Does this help in some way? Like Eran, you said, it's going to happen. We can see where the technology is going, so it doesn't seem like a huge leap. So where are the benefits of this if we put the other hat on?
Yeah, so my partner works in the disability services space, and there are plenty of people in that space who I believe would benefit from having a AI companion / AI coach, not even a dating coach, just somebody to support them in their life that they don't have in real life. I think there's a really big opportunity there to help a lot of people that really need help more than those of us who don't have disabilities, whether it's mental or physical or both. So I think that's a big positive in the future, and I'm sure somebody, if they aren't already, they will be trying to build something for that space eventually. So I'm very pro that. I think that would be a great outcome for this kind of technology.
I think it needs to be taken with what the vulnerability is, right? So, like we've talked about using it with people who are descending into Alzheimer's,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think in the beginning, right? Like I have my like pre-Alzheimer's companion, so I'm like, okay, I can't remember this. You're with me. I think at the point where I no longer understand that my pre-Alzheimer companion is not real, right? Like I'm in that place where I think cartoons are actually just alternate worlds that exist. It becomes dangerous, and I am not sure that the people who are like when we talk about it in these realms, I do not hear people saying, oh, and the place at which they cannot understand what's happening, consent is no longer given. Like there seems to be people in that state. I mean, it's better than nothing, right? And I'm want to make sure that we're being really careful about what is better than nothing for them, as opposed to what we imagine we would be experiencing in that moment.
Yeah.
Because the ability to imagine a disabled experience is not the disabled experience. Just small soapbox. Climbing down.
And listen, I mean, just for any of our audience, I mean, Beth, you've talked about your experiences. It was your mom, right? You were the primary caretaker for your mom for several years, and so you have a very personal experience through that whole process, and so you're obviously you're going to put that on something like this and go, listen, if that had been part in this part of that part, it could have been beneficial here or dangerous here. Or this is where I would have wanted it to not be part of it or whatever. So it's super valuable to have that, that thought process. Andy, I want to make sure I get it to you. Like not necessarily putting on the other hat, but the positives. What do you see? You talked about a coach. Where else can something like this, a digi or a replica, or I saw several other names. There's some in Japan that are more gamified, but sort of the same idea. And there were some articles where people said, Japanese men had admitted to feeling more connected to their AI counterpart than real world people and humans. So, where is this for you as far as like the positive side of this?
Well, I tend to slip it back into the negatives. Let me mention just one, which is related to what Beth was saying, which is those anime or AI characters that were articulated in such a way as to be the perfect companion. They're not representing anything close to what's going to really happen to you in a live relationship, a committed partnership, because humans have all kinds of triggers that AIs do not, and that those are going to flash up. And so, if I could have the perfect respondent who's never challenging me, always supportive, that's a fine thing, but it's not real. So where can it get better, and what are the positives? Well, how about an interruptible AI that is programmed in such a way that it's going to respond much more like a real human, not just in terms of its conversational ability, but in terms of its moods and attitude and reaction. Okay, that's where you start
relationship fights between the human and AI. That's going to be fun.
Or just to give you practice with attenuating your own triggered response. Now that's a progress. Like that simulator for a relationship experience, I think would be very useful and a very positive contribution to the world, because it's not going to hurt anybody. You're going to be doing it alone with your AI, but you're going to have the experience of, okay, how do I work my AI out of this thing? What are the skills that I can use? And then you can say, okay, stop. I want your advice, AI, on what I could have done better there. That's really where we're going, I hope.
I'm having in my head, Andy, I can't right now. The developer has been trying to deploy an update all freaking day, and we get to 75%, and then it totally craps out, and we have to start from the very beginning again. Sometimes it's not all about you, Andy.
Yeah.
Wait until Lana starts talking about
that. Where I went with it, Beth, was some guy gets into or virtual whatever work, and it's me and Andy working together, and Andy's like, "Hey man, how's your weekend?" Well, it's all right. And Andy's like, "Well, why? What's going on?" I don't want to talk about it. So no, what's going on? Why didn't you seem like down? I'm like, I'm in a timeout. My AI, Lana, I said something on Friday. Things were good. And she has been radio silent since Friday night. It's now Monday, and she won't respond to anything I'm saying. I don't know what I did, And is this a 2030 conversation? I mean, is this where this is going? I don't listen, we can all make jokes and stuff like that. Here's what I want to say, because I know we got to wrap up here too. And I want to pull up one of Jen's comments, because I think she's dead on. Thank you, Jen, for putting in the comments, as always. I want to make light of it. It's fun. It's just joke about it, and it's easy to sort of poke fun or whatever. I think what I want to say is, like, I agree with Eran. I think, Andy, you've been in this now 30 years as far as watching this technology evolve. I think it's a very real thing. And so I hope nobody would take this as, you can joke about it, but I don't want anybody to feel like I'm poking fun at the concept of it, because I do think it has some really valuable pieces to it. Where those are, where they stop, how you, as with all things AI, how do you keep children safe? How do you keep the elderly safe? How do you keep us safe? Like everybody in between, like all of that is a real thing. But I do see some extreme value with this. But like everything else with AI, it's like they're the good with the bad. And so, how do you control it? How do you make sure people stay safe? How do you stop people from giving up their life savings to something that seemingly seems innocent or is in your best interest? I don't know. I don't know, but I definitely think it has a place in our future. It's just really tricky, I think, to figure out where the line is. And then, I mean, Eran, you kind of said it in jest, but it's the truth. Like, this stuff is going to merge with actual physical objects like AI robots. And then you have something that's in your house who's standing in your doorway, who's now using all of these same technology. And that's just not that far away. Maybe it's 30 years. I don't know. But it's not that far away.
Roomba gets stuck under the chairs in the kitchen every single time. I don't want my robot Lana.
There's going to be a picture of Lana on the Roomba in Andy's house before too long, going back and forth. All right. Well, listen, go ahead, Beth. Go ahead. And I want to bring up Jen's point.
There's a Family Guy episode snippet that Carl, I think, posted that relates to this. So so go and search Family Guy AI relationship episode if you don't know what we're talking about. But the other thing is
only warning.
No, it's basically that the son prefers his Marilyn robot as it goes on, like, hey, you could do this. No thanks, I'm good. I'm gonna stay in my room with make out with my Marilyn Monroe robot.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I think is interesting about this, and that AI all over is kind of teaching us, is that the fact that this is a thing that is desirable says a lot and is interesting, right? Whether this is the solution to the reason that that's desirable or not, it remains to be seen, or a contributory solution to that. But it is desirable. It clearly is desirable. And therefore, it's a conversation I think that's worth having.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And look, we've said the word romantic relationship, stuff like that, but obviously there's a clear delineation. We can get into maybe a topic about love versus romanticism and where that fits in, AI, relationships that are more based around love and support, and where could that be helpful? And it's a really interesting topic. And obviously loneliness and love, and these are age-old concepts. So AI is just the next technology to play a part in it. But, this stuff's been around forever. Jen's put a couple different comments up. Thank you, Jen, for being a listener today, especially on New Year's Day. Okay, AI therapists are a topic for another show. Yeah, I think absolutely. Also a topic for another show once we find Andy's Phil Donahue episode. And then we search for that on the internet and talk about it. In all seriousness, no, Andy, I think a great topic for another show would be just listening to you talk about your 30-year journey or whatever it's been, as far as being one of the early people with VR. I think that would be a fantastic topic to just listen to you talk about where in your experience that has gone and where you think it's going. So I don't know, maybe something to talk about, but we'll wrap this one up for today. A great way to kick off 2024. It's one of these topics is a great AI topic because it's kind of like, I don't know, there's some of this and some of that. And that's sort of all our AI topics. So some more that we're going to come up this week is tomorrow. We'll be talking about, do small businesses have an AI advantage over larger business because they could be more nimble? I think that'll be interesting. Wednesday, we'll talk about the news. Thursday, we're talking about super alignment, which came out in the news a couple of weeks ago, but with the holidays, we wanted to wait a little bit. So we'll be talking about what super alignment is, if you're interested in that. And then Friday, I'm excited because we're talking about sort of the new 2024 rules for prompt engineering. OpenAI has put out some new stuff. What's the best way to use prompt engineering today, not just 6 months ago or even 3 months ago, but how should you be writing your prompts to get the best outputs out of that? We'll be talking all about that on Friday. So that's what we have coming up. Happy New Year to everybody. Thanks for listening. Come back and see us all this year. We have lots of amazing things lined up and new ideas. So stay tuned for sure.
Thanks, everybody. Happy Monday.
All right. See ya.